From the time the first people set foot in New Zealand, they were confronted by a landscape that would be hard to tame. It was a wilderness of high mountains, thick forests and wild rivers on which they only had a coastal toehold. Over the years, the Māori probed and explored and began to find routes through the South Island's challenging interior. But they were always slaves to the terrain, never masters of it. Even the first European explorers and the settlers who followed recognised this beautiful and spectacular landscape was not going to reveal its secrets easily. Unlocking it was going to take a combination of man and machine, fueled by a special brand of determination. They would need to be pioneers, people with the energy, enthusiasm and ingenuity needed to tame country that never seemed to give a metre without a fight. Contract Cultivation is a firm which epitomises that energy, enthusiasm and ingenuity, that pioneering spirit. There are few places in the lower South Island where it hasn't put its mark, building roads, bridges, dams and foundations. Our changing landscape and our ability to get out there and enjoy it so easily owes much to their efforts. Although now very much a Dunedin firm, Contract Cultivation's roots go back to Timaru in the 1930s. A young teenager, who seems to have always been known as Jock Smith, began doing contract agriculture work using horses, a far cry from today's powerful heavy machinery. Contract Cultivation held its first shareholders meeting in Timaru on the 20th of April 1939. It's a fair bet that no one present could imagine the size and scope of the work the company would be involved with over the remainder of the century. Jock Smith's new enterprise cut its teeth on traditional farm contracts, such as removing willows from riverbanks, building stop banks and draining swamps. But before long, Contract Cultivation began to tap into the demand for roading work. One of the company's early employees was Jack Sibe. That's him in his trademark white overalls. Still going strong into the new millennium at the age of 90, Jack still remembers much about those early days, including the day Jock Smith signed him up.
Asked if I'd like a job on this dozer. And I said, oh, well, that'll be fine, but I said, what are you going to pay? And how much an hour do you want? I said, well, I'd sooner a weekly wage so I know what I'm doing. And he said, how much a week do you want? And I said, oh, £5. He said, oh, you open your mouth pretty wide, haven't you?
One of the first big jobs saw Jack and his wife head to Karamea on the wild west coast to build an airfield. Just getting the D8 bulldozer to such a remote area of the west coast was a project in itself, crossing narrow bridges with the bulldozer, supported by just 4 inches of track on each side. Then there were the railway trucks, which buckled under the weight of the D8. It was all part of doing the impassable.
I don't know, I seem to get all those jobs in the bad places to go, but I was with my shift at that time, and I had to go through this lagoon, and I felt my way with the blade, put it down every now and again, and sometimes I had to get it back up on the seat, and I was right under. The machine was almost right under, and anyway, it was a great relief when she started to climb out and get on a bit of shallower stuff.
Conditions were anything but easy, and it was a matter of managing the best way they could.
But we were given an old house by a neighbour in the bush, and you couldn't see it for bush. I had to run around with the dozer and clean all the scrub round it, and no stove, just a big old open tin fireplace. And first weekend I come out to Timaru and I went to H.M. Sibe's camp, and I said, here, can I have one of these stoves out of that hut? Go for your life, Jack. He said, I don't need it anymore. So I took that over and I put it in the front room fireplace, and that's what we cooked on. No hot water. You know, everything was pretty crude, I might tell you.
For the next 18 months, it was a simple existence. Hard physical work during the day, then huddling round the radio at night to catch up on the war news. Even in one of the remotest parts of a little country hanging off the bottom of the world, global conflict felt close to home.
We had no communication by phone or anything, but we had a good neighbour that lent us this old house, and I fitted up a loudspeaker in the house, and I used the one wire of the fence, the wire fence that run close to the house from the front of his place, and I insulated that wire and tapped into the back of his radio. And of course that was, when war was on, that was what the only news you really got, what was going on. And that worked good actually. And yeah.
While this was going on, contract cultivation kept busy in the south. Projects such as the Mahinarangi Dam, reopening old limestone works near Oamaru, and the old quarries at the Milton Phosphate Works.
When we opened up the phosphate in 1942, we had to strip 20 foot of overburden off the phosphate rock, and I drilled it and shot it, and we had quite a lot of men there. After I shot it, they had to break it up with the size to go through a 6-inch ring. That was just, you know, average. They took notice of that, and poor beggars, I had 30-odd manpower men from Dunedin out. They went round all Dunedin and picked these men up, some out of Cadbury Fries, some bakers, shoemakers, all sorts. And the poor beggars had never seen a sprawling hammer in their life, and it was cruel to see them after a few days, all the hands blisters and everything else. But after a while they settled down and turned out pretty good.
The money earned from these vital wartime projects gave the company a boost. By the end of World War II, contract cultivation was working in a whole range of areas: roading, strip mining, and developing state housing subdivisions. With more work becoming available in the south, the decision was made to relocate the company's base from Timaru to Dunedin. Major projects were just around the corner. In 1946-47, contract cultivation railed a couple of D8s and 2 carryalls to Kurau before driving them through the Mackenzie country to work on the first Pukaki Dam. It was the first of many visits the company was going to have to the Mount Cook area, punching through roads and building dams. The area was only just being opened up, and this meant opportunity for the company. Contract cultivation also found itself busy with work in the central Otago area, picking up many of the contracts for work on large sections of road. It was at this time that the company began an important association with another Dunedin firm, Fulton Hogan.
Fulton Hogan's relation with contract cultivation goes back many years. When the road was getting built from Dunedin to Queenstown, Milton to Alexandra, there was a very good semi-partnership which contract cultivation did the earthworks, Fulton Hogan came along and did the sealing. That was the way it went for many years.
The company was also drawn into Southland, one of its largest ever contracts, a 70-kilometre section of the Mossburn-Tianau Road. Opening up the roads also meant an opening up of work opportunities as the roading network slowly pushed west towards the mountains. The Southern Alps had already been tamed, or at least forced to yield a foothold. The Arthurs and Lewis passes were put through. But a road through the Haast Pass remained just a dream. A pre-war attempt had to be abandoned, but in the 1950s, the Ministry of Works was again eyeing the challenge. Outside help was needed, and companies such as Contract Cultivation were called in to lend a hand. That basically meant being left to tackle the toughest sections, such as bridging the wild gates of Haast. Steep terrain, wild rivers thundering through steep gorges, thick forest and rain, lashings of rain, up to 23 inches in 21 days. And then there was the snow. It was tough work, requiring tough men who knew what they were doing. It was a chance for contract cultivation to do what it was good at, doing the impassable. Getting places was never easy. A flying fox dozens of metres above a raging torrent. What roads had been formed was still difficult and dangerous, and the really hard sections hadn't even been tackled yet. Much of the time, progress was measured in feet rather than yards. Rocky bluffs had to be carved into roads with the use of a fair degree of sweat and nous and a good-sized stick of gelignite. They even had special sticks of explosive made, 3.5 inches in diameter and 2 feet long, which went off with a real bang. Then it was in with the bulldozer to clear that load of rock before following it up with another charge and more of the same.
I let somebody else let a shot off, and I backed away up the road, which I thought was about 300 yards, and I was rolling a cigarette, and the next minute there was a bit of rock hit the bonnet and bang, and broke my nose and cut me 2 lips right through here.
While bluffs were blasted, rivers had to be bridged. Here, the ingenious Bailey and Calendar Hamilton bridges really came into their own. They were used in several different places to span the wild and rocky Haast River. The great thing about these structures was that they could be transported in pieces and then assembled on site. While assembly was pretty straightforward, like a big boy's Meccano set, sliding the bridges into position was a job that required plenty of nerve and skill. Their self-supporting design made them tough, and there seemed to be little that couldn't be tackled when in the hands of the contract cultivation crew. They could even be used as work platforms while bridge foundations were poured into the riverbed below.
After all that was done, yes, to pull the Calendar Hamilton bridge over, we winched that over with a D8 tractor from the far side, the west side, anchored with another one, and it took a day to haul it across.
It was tricky and dangerous work, but the skills of men and machine came through. There were the occasional injuries, but contract cultivation never lost a man during the project. Working in the Haast was an isolated existence, living in huts which were often left perched on the side of the road after being hauled in by truck. Visitors were few, although there were notable ones, such as the famous writer, publisher and author A.H. Reid. Otherwise, the main visitors were the boss, on one of his forays into the front line to check on the troops, and some of the locals would wing in for lunch, or run away to avoid being dinner. Apparently, it was not uncommon for a grader to disappear on a deer stalking trip, or for a bulldozer to be used to dig for worms before a fishing trip. There were plenty of characters, some eking out a solitary existence.
They'd come down to the camp, and some of them could come down quite lit up and that, and they used to tell me the stories they used to tell was that they tapped the back pine trees, and they put a little chute in it and collected the alcohol, and this is what they were using.
It was bloody awful. It rained all the time. Sandflies were there with a square mile. And yes, I was there right through putting the Bailey Bridge across, which took about a fortnight. And it kept on raining for the fortnight just to keep us awake. And one of the boys decided he'd wash his blankets. And he had grey army blankets. So we got out and put them in the washing machine and washed his blankets and hung them on the line. And when he come back at dinner time, they'd changed colour. They were white with bloody flies had got them blowing them, so he had to burn them in the end.
So we had snow, and because the road, we had old gear, old D8s and that. And if you compare the gear we've got today compared to way back then, I mean, we would have gone through there in a week, whereas it took, say, to do a certain part of the road, it took 3 weeks, but these days you'd go down there in 2 or 3 days.